Thank you, Mr. Reward, for the kind introduction. Good morning, Norwich.
Good morning.
What a beautiful day to be an American. I am humbled to be asked to be the guest speaker today for this wonderful community. As Frank mentioned, many of you know me as part of the Curtis Lumber team. My name is John Sheldon. I have served just short of 22 years of active military service. I am a retired sergeant major who has had the privilege of serving with some of the best men and women all over the world. Some of my deployments have included places you have recently heard of in the media or have seen on the 6 o'clock news. As you were traveling into town this morning, did you notice all the flags on Main Street? The sight of all those American flags brought a joyful tear to my eyes. Our American flag is a symbol of all that is good about this great country. Our American flag represents an idea that many of our ancestors fought bravely and died for. We are here today to celebrate those brave heroes who were called for to leave this world for another. As we celebrate these warriors, this brings both joy and sorrow. As we celebrate these fallen heroes, it makes this day unlike any other. Today is Memorial Day. On this day since 1868, communities have come together to honor those that have given their last full measure of devotion to our country. Today is a day that draws all communities to visit our local cemeteries so that we can honor and remember those who have done their duty as God allowed them to see that duty. Today is a time for Americans to reconnect with our history and core values by honoring those who have given that ultimate sacrifice for the ideas we cherish. Today is a day we must remember the 1 million brave men and women that have given their life in our nation's defense. And today is a day we must remember the sacrifices our heroes have made so that we may continue to be a country of free thinkers, free doers, and free believers. I stand before you today in uniform to help remind everyone the true meaning of Memorial Day. As generations pass, the meaning of this day sometimes becomes distant or vague. Over the years, Memorial Day has become lost to commercialism or just drowned in forgetful indulgence. Every year without fail, we have some local news anchor walking up and down the streets of one of our communities asking people if they understand the true meaning of Memorial Day. And every year I watch, hoping the answers change from the year before. And every year, they don't. Earlier this week in a larger city to our south, I saw one young person being interviewed saying that Memorial Day was a day to celebrate. To celebrate because they have mattresses on sale at 35% off at their local furniture store. All I could do was shake my head. Another person said that the only thing they care about Memorial Day is the fact that it's a 3-day weekend. A 3-day weekend in which they can watch 72 hours of Hogan's Hero reruns. All I could do was shake my head. I could go on and on. Not one individual being interviewed mentioned that Memorial Day is a day to honor all the brave men and women who have sacrificed their life in preserving the freedoms that we all love so dearly. Not one person mentioned that Memorial Day is a day to remember the young brave men and women who have sacrificed their dreams to preserve ours. Not one person mentioned that Memorial Day is a day when all Americans, regardless of ideologies, race, creed, or political persuasion, join together to remember all the sacrifices of those who have answered our nation's call. Take a second to glance around you right now. Because of the sacrifices of those young men and women who rest in our cemeteries, you are able to enjoy what you see. What you see is freedom. Freedom is something that we should never take for granted. I can assure you that freedom is not free. Freedom is a luxury that comes with a very steep price. I'd like to mention a few heroes from the Norwich area that paid that steep price. PFC Earl Peter Beeching. Earl was assigned to the 3rd Marines, 3rd Marine Division. Earl was deployed to Vietnam. Earl was only in country for 4 months. 4 months before he was killed in action. PFC Beeching was only 18 years old. PFC Richard W. Frink. Richard assigned to the 3rd Marines, 3rd Marine Division. Richard, too, was deployed to Vietnam. Richard was only in country for 16 days. 16 days before he was killed in action. PFC Frank was 19 years old. Staff Sergeant Howard Earl Burdick. Howard was assigned to the 4th Marines, 4th Marine Division. Howard, too, was assigned to Vietnam. Howard was in country for 22 days. 22 days before he was killed in action. Staff Sergeant Burdick was only 23 years old. These 3 young brave warriors, they gave their life for this great country. These 3 young brave warriors gave their life to help preserve the freedoms that we see. If I had time, I could go on and on. Since World War I, this local community has lost over 170 military members. These military members were all killed in action, defending the freedoms we all love so dearly. We must never forget to honor these heroes by serving these patriots as well as they have served us. We must honor these heroes as a nation by keeping sacred trust towards all those who wear America's uniforms and the families who love them. Do you ever wonder what makes an individual put this uniform on with the knowledge that someday they may be placed in harm's way? Why do you think a person is willing to risk their lives for someone that they have never met? Have you ever wondered what's in the DNA of a person that says, "Send me"? Our enemies across the globe, they will never understand why men and women of character are willing to step forward and look danger and adversity straight in the eye and refuse to blink or give ground even to their own deaths. Our enemies will never understand why we are so seemingly willing to fight and if need be to die for the freedoms we all love so dearly. Our enemies need to understand that we fight. We fight because we believe. Not that war is a good thing, but sometimes war is necessary. Those who lie in our cemeteries, they did not die for the glory of war. Those who lie in our cemeteries, they died for the prize that we call freedom. If you are part of the small population who has had the privilege of wearing this uniform, you understand. If you are part of our small population that has served, you understand that close bond that we have with a person that shares our same foxhole. We understand that this bond doesn't see a race, creed, color, sexual orientation, or political persuasion. My wife Kathy and I, as mentioned, we have a son Gunnar. Gunnar is a lieutenant in the Army, and he is assigned to a military police battalion. Are we concerned that someday Gunnar may be placed in harm's way? As parents, of course we are. As a soldier, I am comforted knowing that the Army has leaders like him to lead our nation's young soldiers into combat. I am comforted knowing that Gunnar will help bring these young soldiers home to their families when their duty is over. I am also overwhelmed with a sense of pride that Gunnar will probably never understand. A pride that he is following in my footsteps, and that Gunnar is a small part of our population that is willing to do what is necessary to preserve our nation's freedom. This is my 5th Memorial Day speech in the last 6 years. At some point during all of my speeches, I always mention something about the nation's politics. Not this year. I believe we have enough people in our country trying to divide our nation apart. I will not be part of it. The heroes who rest in our cemeteries, they do not care about our daily politics. Our military members out patrolling right now in Afghanistan, they do not care about our daily politics. The military members that are guarding the tomb of the unknown soldiers at the Arlington National Cemetery, they do not care about our daily politics. As a country, we need to forget about our daily politics and continue to support that never-ending sense of duty that our armed forces have as they serve our nation throughout the world. Today, our military members are up against the biggest threat that our nation has experienced in the last 70 years. The world is changing. One of these threats has been caught flying bombers off the coast of Alaska and sailing spy vessels off the coast of Maine. Maine is where we build our nuclear submarines. This country is no friend of ours and should never be trusted. The world is changing. We have another country that's been leading the headline news lately. This country is very secretive and unpredictable. This country is controlled by a Wile E. Coyote leader who seems to have an unlimited inventory of Acme rockets. This country threatens to level the country to their south almost on a daily basis. I have 2 one-year tours on the DMZ in this country. I can assure you that this is a huge threat. The world is changing. We are up against an enemy that would do anything to kill as many of us as possible. This enemy is called terrorists. These terrorists come from both abroad and here on our own soil. These terrorists are called everything from ISIS to Timothy McVeigh. The things that these cowards have in common is that they hate our way of life. They hate our beliefs that we call freedom. These cowards, they hide in the shadows and they wait to attack us when we're not looking. As you look up at the stars tonight, remember that there are American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who are far from home standing guard against threats such as these. Remember that these military members protecting us around the world, they're looking up at the same stars that we are. Remember that the military members protecting us, they're away from their families and loved ones. Remember that many of these brave men and women are at times lonely and scared. Often during my deployments, I would look up at the stars at night and I'd wonder if my family saw the same stars that I did. When I too became lonely, these are the things that would keep me focused and going. I never wanted to let my fellow soldiers down. I knew that we were protecting those that were not strong enough to protect themselves. My parents, Don and Jane Sheldon, they raised me to never quit. And as bad as I thought I might have it at times, my uncle, Alfred DeForest from Mount Upton, New York, he had it far worse. My uncle fought in the Battle of the Bulge, where some 80,000 military members were killed or critically injured in a 40-day battle from December 44 to January 45. I would also be comforted each day by pulling out an old New Testament Bible given to me by a wonderful lady, one of my heroes, my grandmother, Mary Sheldon. I would often read Psalms 23, verse 4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff. They comfort me. Many of you sitting in the crowd today, you serve this great nation in some capacity. On behalf of a grateful nation, we thank you. As we stand here on Memorial Day remembering our fallen heroes, let's also remember the families, what the families go through while their loved ones are deployed around the world. Often we never think of the families and the sacrifices they make. In closing, I'd like to read a poem by Stephen Washington. This poem gives us the true meaning of what sacrifices are made by service members and their families. This poem is titled, A Soldier's Way. When my son was small, he and his friends loved to play Marines. A brown-eyed soldier dressed up in his helmet and his jeans. I asked him why he always died whenever he would play. He just said, I save my friends, because that's the soldier's way. As he grew up, his mom and I always wondered what he'd be. When he reached high school, he enrolled in their ROTC. Once he finished high school, he enlisted without delay. I should have known it all along, because that's a soldier's way. When he finished training and became a full Marine, I was the proudest father that anyone had ever seen. A brown-eyed soldier, not a thread in disarray, stood proudly there before me, because that's a soldier's way. He eventually got married to a beautiful young wife, and I asked if she was ready for a military life. She just smiled and hugged me tightly as she fondly did convey, that nothing could make her prouder, because that's a soldier's way. One day he told us he must leave, for a war had broken out. He wasn't sure what started it or what it was about. His mother asked if there was any way that he could stay. He told her, "Mom, it's my duty, because that's a soldier's way." She said, "Son, it's very dangerous. You could be killed, you know." He said, "Mom, if we all stayed home, there'd be no one left to go." "Dad," he said, "if this war is right, it's not for me to say, but I have to follow orders, because that's a soldier's way." Just recently, his wife received a visit and a letter. Our son had died in combat, and there was not a better. Leader in all the company, and on that fateful day, he bravely saved all of his friends, because that's a soldier's way. He left behind a sweet young wife and a beautiful little son. We are all very proud of him and everything he's done. My son did his duty, and he is coming home today in a flag-draped wooden coffin, because that's a soldier's way. Some have asked if I'm angry that my only son had to die. I simply smile and shake my head, and here is my reply. My friends, take a look at all you have around you here this day. You have all these lovely things, because that's a soldier's way. My grandson looks just like his dad in his helmet and his jeans as he plays out with his buddies, pretending they're Marines. And when he falls and pretends to die, then I know right away that he has just saved all of his friends, because that's the soldier's way. I want to thank everyone for coming out today to support our fallen heroes. As you are attending your picnics and barbecues today, please remember to pray for those that have given our country that ultimate sacrifice. And please pray for our military members deployed around the world. Don't be asleep at the wheel. The world is changing. Keep your rifle clean and your powder dry.